Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to Gettin Savvy in Health, Wealth, and Beauty. Important to note that everything is for entertainment purposes only. Please do speak and meet with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And also, please meet and speak with your GP before making any health or beauty decisions. All right, Melissa, so we are back at it, and it's been definitely a lot of volatility in the marketplace. We're going to talk a little bit about that, as well as one company that you asked me to look into, which is a real growth company. Actually, that's one of the things I wanted to mention as well, with growth versus value investing. I think that's important to take a look at. And on your docket, what do you care about this week?
So one of my patients actually told me about it, this special that Oprah did that I streamed on Disney Plus called the Menopause Revolution. So she had on Maria Shriver, Halle Berry. There was another famous actress as well, and they all told their stories about perimenopause and menopause. And so Oprah always does a great job of sort of making it interesting, making you watch, making it about storytelling. So I just thought we would talk about that a little bit and some of the takeaways. And
Okay.
then I also wanted to talk about one side effect associated with semaglutide or Ozempic that's been in the news, because there's been so much positive info, and I post so much positive stuff on my social media about how much of a game changer semaglutide and these GLP-1 agonists have been in medicine. But people say to me, well, aren't there any risks? Aren't there any harms? Aren't there any side effects? So I wanted to touch base a little bit about those.
Okay, sounds good. Why don't we just kick it off with the market for anybody who, and I think and I hope that, just, listening week by week, you learn a little bit about what's going on in the world that is affecting the markets, which affects your pension funds, which affects Social Security, which affects your potential for jobs. Like that, if you really bring it all together, that's when we're talking about the markets, that's what the markets represent. It represents companies and the world and really people, which is why I love it so much. So it's definitely continued to be volatile since we last filmed, which was only a week ago. We saw the markets continue to go down. However, we've also learned of some progress potentially being made on trade deal fronts, particularly with India, that have helped the market move higher. We've also heard from various companies reporting their latest quarterly earnings that it seems as though a lot of the companies, the results aren't as bad as feared. So the problem with that, though, is that's backward looking, right? That's the previous quarter. You will hear from company managements. You and I have talked about this since the beginning, that the other important aspect when you have a company report is what the management says on the conference call about the future, which is called the company's guidance. So that's been a little bit of a concern for certain companies, certain industries. Some have even, in fact, pulled their guidance for the rest of the year because these CEOs are saying, well, I don't know what's going to happen. And we saw that in particular in the airline space. So that's been, something that people are concerned about for sure. We had Pepsi as an example, lowered their guidance. CMG, so the ticker there is PEP, they lowered their guidance.
What does that mean, lower their guidance?
Okay, that's a great question. So company managements, it sounds hard to believe that they can know what their revenue would be for an entire year, but they can because they know what their distribution is, right? In terms of Pepsi, they know how many bags of chips they sell on average. They know what the population growth might be. They know if they're going to have a new product coming out that might increase growth. So the company will give their forecast for what they expect their revenue to be for the entire year, what they expect their expenses to be. I'm simplifying it. There's a lot more line items. What their margin will be, therefore what their earnings will be, and then all the street analysts. So there's an analyst at every big investment bank that covers certain companies, certain sectors, like the food and beverage analyst, the retail analyst, the semiconductor chip analyst, and they cover all these companies, and they then do their own research and think, that CEO might be undershooting or overshooting. And if he's undershooting the outlook for revenue and growth and profit, and that stock might actually do better than anybody's anticipating, or that's reflected in the market. So guidance is very important.
But are they giving, when you say they lowered their guidance, what does that
Mhm.
mean? So they are saying it's not going to do as well as they thought?
Correct.
So why would they ever do that? It's like they're almost like, encouraging people to not buy their stock or to sell their position in the stock. But I guess they have to be honest. They have to
That's
do that
right.
due diligence and tell people. And did they say why? Did they think that their expenses were going to go up because of tariffs? Did they think that their consumption was going to go down because of GLP-1 drugs and people snacking less?
So for Pepsi, I didn't see what they said, like why on the conference
Yeah.
call. So I don't know, but to your point, broadly speaking, it can be because the consumer isn't as strong, GLP-1 drugs, tariffs. There was an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day that was talking about how Pepsi is more affected than Coke just based on where they
Oh, the source.
where they create their inputs for their suit or their special sauce, their syrup.
Okay.
So
Well, I saw, did you see this whole thing? I don't know if it's true, but did you see this whole thing from RFK Jr. saying he wants to try to get the high fructose corn syrup out of Coke, and instead he wants to use cane sugar like they do in Mexico? Did
hmm,
you see this?
I didn't see
No?
that one. No.
So I don't know how real it is or how much of an agenda he's truly going to make it, but essentially he's saying, why do we use high fructose corn syrup? Why can't we use cane sugar like in Mexico? Which,
Right.
which then got me thinking, like, so are Mexican people that much healthier than Americans
Mm,
because they drink this cane sugar Coke? No. Like, I feel like it's like focusing on such a minutia. If you're still drinking Coke
yeah.
every day, it doesn't really matter if it's cane sugar or high fructose corn syrup. It's just too much sugar. But also another interesting tidbit that I learned
Mm-hmm.
over, so it was just Passover in the Jewish holidays.
Mm-hmm.
So I was having dinner and the lady beside me told me, she said, did you know that the best Coke is during Passover because they have a special kosher for Passover Coke that uses cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup? Because during Passover, you're not
Mm-hmm.
allowed to eat certain foods, corn being one of them. So you can't have,
Oh,
right. So you can't have certain starches because of the whole, they didn't have time for the bread to rise. And anyhow, it's part of the tradition. So therefore, they sell these special Coke that has cane sugar instead of high fructose corn syrup, and you can't keep it on the shelves. Apparently, it does taste better. So
you're kidding. So
yeah,
have you ever seen that though advertised in Loblaws or Shoppers?
I've never known to look for it, but apparently it has a green cap instead of,
Oh,
so maybe they sell it in the kosher aisle, or maybe it's in certain grocery stores that are in more, Jewish
yeah.
neighborhoods. But I will look for it. It was just like interesting, something new
Yeah.
learned. Anyhow, that has nothing to do with Pepsi earnings or
Okay.
Coca-Cola, but I just thought it was an interesting little factoid.
Right, it is for sure. I also want to mention too that like Procter and Gamble, they missed expectations and they cut their
Mm,
guidance. So
mm.
so again, it's a company management, a CEO saying, it's don't I don't know if this is Procter specifically, but in general, like if they see trends changing, they do have to come out and change their forecast for the year
Yeah.
or for the quarter. I just want to mention as well, because I think a lot of people will have seen this in the news or headlines, that since the beginning of April, the S&P 500, so one of the big indices in the United States that represents 500 of the largest companies, hence S&P 500, there was $5 trillion erased in company valuations. So the market pulled back to the tune of $5 trillion. And in fact, that's the S&P 500. For the Dow, it was the worst April, or has been the worst April since the Great Depression. We've also,
Wow.
yeah, and we've also seen the US dollar at a 3-year low. So I'm just pointing out some of the kind of newsy items that, you might want to be, or somebody might want to be aware of. There's also this theme in the market right now that we've talked a little bit about, or, it's in the headlines everywhere, which is, the Sell America trade, right?
Yeah.
And interestingly, I thought this was interesting, that apparently $19 trillion there's $19 trillion of foreign investment in the US equity market, and
Okay.
about 7 trillion in terms of treasuries, all to say foreigners own about 20 to 30% of the US market combined in terms of equities and fixed income. So that's a lot of potential outflow when people talk about the Sell America trade. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, Melissa, is because one of the things, people think about, or big money managers and hedge funds think about, when you look at the market and how and why it's moving. So what the tailwinds are to the upside and what the headwinds are to the downside, they do look at what's called money flow. Okay, that's just the amount of money moving into the market versus out of the market for various reasons. It could be fear of recession. It could be the Sell America trade. It could be many, many things. But money flow, when you think of buying into a stock, into an ETF, into whatever, that also matters, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, well, let's see if I understood. I don't know. I
Okay.
remember when Trudeau came into power in Canada years ago. I remember reading someone write, "Sell Canada."
Right.
Time. I remember thinking, like, what do they mean? But
That's right.
maybe what you're saying, it's very similar, like get your money out of Canada, Trudeau's coming in, and maybe now that Trump's coming in, whereas people thought initially, oh, that's going to be great for the market with Trump, it's going to be so good for business, he's going to lower corporate taxes. Now people are having kind of a different sentiment with all these tariffs, sell America. So look who's, so they're worried about a recession,
Right.
obviously, but it's interesting because it's very hard to know what to do, but
Mm-hmm.
I guess you just have to wait and see what happens, and then hopefully it will be time to then buy America again,
Right.
and that's where the opportunity will be created. It's just no one
Right.
ever knows when that moment is.
So a couple of points. I think you completely get the concept correctly. Um, and that money flow does matter. And when Trudeau
Mhm.
came in, money flow absolutely came out of Canada. It came out of the Canadian market. So the capital markets weren't as strong. And it came out of the economy. There was a lot of what's called foreign direct investment, FDI, big international companies that pulled out of Canada, particularly in the energy sector, because it was so difficult to get any energy deals done. I mean, because we've made it very clear that we were not open for business. So the Canadian market versus the US market, pales in comparison in terms of returns because of
Yeah.
that sell American trade. Or sell Canada trade. So it's a real factor. And then you as the money manager, you as your own investor or whoever you hire, you have to think, okay, well, what sectors are more protected? I'm talking about Canada right now
Yeah.
from that. What still, is so key and critical to the Canadian market that it'll still either pay me a dividend or will grow 3%, which isn't exciting when you look at that compared to other companies or countries. I will say though, what's interesting about this, Sell America trade, there's also been apparently $2.1 billion of US equity buying over the past 3 weeks. So from foreign investors. So even though in the headlines, and this is where people, you still do your homework, or hopefully you listen to us, because there is this research out there, right? So you've actually seen foreign investors buying American stocks over the past 3 weeks.
Well, maybe ones that have been waiting that thought they were too overvalued and
Yeah,
now think they're at a better price.
that's right.
I don't know. I really just don't. I mean, I don't know how anybody can predict this stuff. So I'm trying to be, what's the word? Disciplined enough to
Yeah,
stick to the plan and just
yes.
keep dollar cost averaging and
Yep.
hoping that over time, the American economy will continue to grow.
I think it has been and will. And interestingly, do you remember a couple of weeks ago, well, a month ago, because the beige book, which sounds very
Yes.
boring, beige,
Yeah.
comes out. Well, it just came out, and there's been very little change in economic activity, which is
Okay.
a positive. So to your point, the American economy continues to grow. It is. Manufacturing was a little bit mixed, but no real change. hiring was a bit slower, prices were a little bit higher, but no major moves. Now, again, it could be too soon, too early, but the advantage with the beige book is it's 12, I think it's 12 different districts within the United States that report from a survey perspective, economic data. So we are continuing to see growth, and we're continuing to see a number of companies that are still performing okay from a quarterly basis. Again, there's still more to go because the tariff and trade war talks, really, there's still a lot of unknowns. So we will see.
So here's a tough question for you. So Tesla. So I know that we had discussed Tesla, months
in October.
In October, and looking at it as being an interesting buy because of their AI. So are you buying more Tesla now? Because if this is what I'm trying to understand, if you thought it was attractive at that price, you must think it's very attractive at this price. Like for instance, I always compare it to a purse. If I'm looking at a Chanel bag and I see it, and it's like, I want that bag and I'm ready to buy it, and it's $7,000. And that's crazy that I would spend that kind of money on a purse. So I wait and I wait and I wait. But then all of a sudden, if I'm willing to buy it, and now they're selling the Chanel bag for $2,000, it's hard because it's like you would think, first of all, like, well, if I thought I was good at 7,000, of course at 2,000, I'm going to get 2 or 3. Amazing. Unless I'm like, was it really so nice? Or was I just, caught up in the excitement of it? Like it makes you, I don't know.
I know. And that's, I think, where, knowing why you want to own something always really matters. Because remember, for me, I was buying into 2 themes, Elon Musk and AI.
And those still hold true, right?
They still hold true. So interestingly, and I wanted to bring up Tesla, they did kick off earnings for the Mag 7. So Mag 7, if anybody's out there learning about that, those are the big tech companies like Amazon, Meta. So M is for Meta, A is for Amazon, Tesla. So it kicked off earnings this week. The auto revenue was down 20%. Earnings, this is year over year. Earnings were down 40% year over year. The stock is down 40% on a year-to-date basis. So from, January 1 to right now, the stock's down significantly. Now, interestingly, though, and the reason why the quarter, so this was their first quarter, was weaker, was because they had softer vehicle deliveries. What's important, though, is that the street was a little bit more positive on it. And that's for 2 reasons. So the stock performed better than expected on the back of their earnings, despite the fact that profit was down, because they said there's no change in their robo-taxi pilot launch program in Austin and June, and the expectations that they will launch in more or multiple cities in the United States in the back half of 2025. So that robo-taxi was another reason why I like the stock. So that is still apparently on target. And then Musk also made the comment that his commitment to Doge will significantly decrease in May. In other words, he's done so much of the work already, so he'll be back focused. So to your point, the stock actually moved higher. But more to your point, I should say, is yes, if I liked it lower and I liked it higher, I should be buying it now.
I know, but it's hard to, that's where I'm at, right? Because it's always the one stock that got away from me. We always talk about that. The first, 2 stocks I was ever going to buy were Netflix and Tesla, but I didn't fill on Tesla.
Remind people what you didn't fill means.
So I put in a limit order saying buy the stock if it hits this price. And I put the price just a little lower than what it was at, thinking that I would get a bit of a discount when I bought it. And I just assumed it filled because my Netflix filled. And then because I was very, very amateur, and then I went to check and I'm like, oh, I guess it never hit that price that I put it in to buy it at. And so it never filled. And then I just sort of looked at it as like a sign, like, oh, maybe.
Oh, no. Sign.
Maybe I wasn't just, or I got lazy or I chickened out, or I don't know. And then all of a sudden Tesla went so high and I could have made, I wouldn't have invested that much. So I don't think it really would have been that
right. Well,
significant. So, but it's, so I'm always thinking, is it something that I would potentially buy into again?
Probably worth it to look at.
Yeah.
Especially since I would say too that even though the market's been up the past 2 days, that I think there's still a lot of people are saying it's like, and when I say people, I'm saying like big money managers are like, no, it's still too volatile, it's still too whatever.
Yeah.
So in other words, you still have the opportunities. There's still probably going to be a lot of movement. But I just want to be clear for people. For anybody who wants to buy a stock or an ETF, you can use it doing a market order or a limit order. If the stock is trading at 15 and you put in a market order, you might buy it at 15 because it's trading at 15, but within those couple seconds, it might move to 15.05, so $15.05, and your market order is going to fill you. So you fill means you've got it, either buy or sell. Your order's been executed is what it means. And you might be buying it at $15.05. You might be buying it at $15, $15.10. If it's not a liquid stock, meaning it doesn't trade a lot, and you put in a market order, might fill at $16. It's rare. And no one here is probably buying very illiquid stocks, but just FYI. And if you specify if it's trading at $15 and you're like, nah, no, I think I've seen it trade lower, I don't really want to pay 15. I'm going to put my limit order in at $14.95. So just so people know that
But then if it never does dip down, you're never going to fill. You're never going to execute that order.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. I
So
still
what did you think? So before
Yeah.
we segue into that, what did you think about the whole space mission about Katy Perry and what's her name? You know,
Sanchez.
Sanchez, Lauren Sanchez, and that crew going up there.
I don't know. I really don't know. I'm happy to be
Like,
on Earth
would
and
you
just,
go? No, I'm
would I
dead serious. Would
go?
you go? If you
No,
were invited to go with that group of women and they swapped out Katy Perry for you, and you got a call, you know what? You are an investor in SpaceX. We are inviting you on this space mission. Would you go?
no,
I wouldn't go either.
you
That's what
wouldn't? I thought you would
no,
go.
no chance am I getting shot up there. Well, I have no interest in that. So I'm like, I feel like they're giving these women such a hard time, but like, holy cow, what brave women that would go. And I'll tell you something, I would kiss the ground if I made it back.
Interesting.
I really would. Like, can you imagine? You know how high up that is? Space. You could never come back. You could just,
Yeah.
oh,
That's so funny. I would have thought you'd be the daredevil and go.
no, no, not for that. I wouldn't go. Now, if they invited me on a trip to St. Bart's,
You'd go on that trip.
I'd go. If they invited me to take a picture in that spacesuit for how
Oh,
I
I
do,
know that spacesuit. I felt
but
like
I
I was
wouldn't.
watching.
But I
Wait, by
wouldn't
the
go.
way, you're too young for this. There was a great space program or space television show called like The Buck. I don't know. Now I'm forgetting it. Anyway, I'll find it next time. Anyway, sexiest space outfits ever.
Yeah, it's a good Halloween costume. Like it's nice,
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. I
But
can't. So, but have you been asking your girlfriends if they'd go into space? Like, have you been
not
asking
one
other people?
person I know would say yes.
Okay.
And also, like I do think that they're giving all this flack for calling themselves astronauts, and like I get that, but they must have to gone through training to know what to do. They would have to be, like it can't just be like, oh, here you go, put on the outfit and get in the spaceship,
I
go.
don't know. That one,
I,
I don't know.
I don't know. Anyhow,
Okay. Anyway, moving on. Like
moving on.
we have a couple
Okay.
other market things, but go tell me more about,
So let's talk about Oprah. So
yeah.
that's, and thinking about some of these women that were on the trip. I imagine some of them through menopause or in the menopause transition. So there was a special on, Oprah does these specials, and it was called the Menopause Revolution. I watched it. I streamed it on Disney Plus. I don't know how else other people could watch it, if it was on TV or how they get it.
Mhm.
But if you want to watch it, the way I did it was through Disney Plus.
Okay.
And basically, she had on Halle Berry, Maria Shriver, I think her name's Mary Claire Haver, or some one of this very influencer who speaks a lot about menopause on her social feed. She's a physician. And basically, they were talking about their own personal stories in perimenopause and going into menopause, and how
Hmm.
so little was known about it and how they didn't get the care they needed. And it was
Mm-hmm.
actually very informative,
Hmm.
and it was entertaining. Like, it was easy to watch because it's celebrities telling stories. But again, I came out of the special thinking, okay, here we've just talked about it again, that more people are being open and verbal about discussing hormones and discussing that they may be struggling, but we still don't really have that surefire way of treating it. There's a bunch of different, menopausal hormone therapy, but there's still so many unanswered questions about when's the optimal time to go on it, what's the optimal dosing, should you be taking it preventatively so that, like, is menopause unhealthy? Like, should we be preventively taking estrogen
Mm-hmm.
to keep our levels higher to prevent disease? Like, those are the sorts of things that I'm more interested in learning about. But,
Versus,
well, just people talking about that they go through menopause, like
yeah.
talking about the fact that they wake up in the night sweat. Actually, Halle Berry's story was crazy. She basically said how she went to the doctor because she was having extreme vaginal pain, and he looked at her and he said, "This is a terrible case of herpes." And she said, "Herpes? Like, how am I getting herpes at in or early 50s?"
Wow.
Like, I better go talk to my boyfriend or husband or whatever. And it turns out that they tested him and they tested her, and it wasn't herpes. It was just extreme vaginal atrophy from lack of estrogen and having
Hmm.
intercourse with the lack of estrogen
Hmm.
causing blistering. Anyhow, lovely topic, but
Yeah.
she spoke about it. I mean, I think a lot of women would be embarrassed about talking about something like that. And
Hmm.
her doctor didn't even know how to treat her until eventually they were like, okay, we need to talk about the fact that you're in menopause and these are your treatment options. And,
Mm-hmm.
there was other, women talking about the effect on brain,
Yeah.
correlated with dementia.
Oh,
And
really? And that obviously would have been Maria Shriver talking about that because she's
correct,
head of, I think, the Alzheimer's
correct.
Association. Yeah.
Yeah. So she was talking about it, and then they had another neurologist talking about it. But what they weren't willing to go so far as to talk about was whether, again, the question is, should we be giving all women estrogen to protect their brains when they go into menopause as
Yeah.
prevention? Or do we still only use it when someone comes in who says, I can't live like this any longer, it's so bad, and then
Yeah.
that's still where we struggle.
Well, and I have a feeling though, I mean, as I think people listening to this might know, that I've been involved with Mount Sinai Hospital, and we've, I think, really, made this so much more visible and well known with the building of the Center for Mature Women at Mount Sinai and the world renowned Dr. Wendy Wolfman.
Mhm.
And, it's interesting because I hear you, like, is there a standardized format for us? And
Oh,
I will ask because I think to your point, and I know everybody's different, but, my concern is, yeah, what's the impact of lack of hormones on my brain health?
your
And because you
on
can't
your
see that.
skin, right?
Yeah, well, you can see the skin and the hair, but
Yeah,
what about my cardiovascular and vascular system? Like
but you
that's what
won't
I'm
know,
concerned about.
right?
That you don't even see those effects until you're 70, or
Right.
maybe now, I don't know.
So
But yeah, I
that's what
think,
I'm trying to understand
yeah,
is, the woman who says, well, it's not that bad. I'm noticing I wake up a few nights. I'm having some insomnia. I'm having some night sweats, but it's not that bad. Are we
yeah,
still recommending that they go on hormones
mm-hmm,
to prevent certain
yeah,
diseases like, the genitourinary syndrome of menopause, the like osteoporosis that's associated with low estrogen, um,
yeah.
the
Mood
increased
swings.
dementia.
And a
Yeah,
lot of my girlfriends have brain fog, a
yeah.
lot.
hmm I
And
think they talk about that as a huge symptom also of it.
yeah, which would
Yeah.
be very difficult. And the whole point, not the whole point, a lot of this too, and why it's so important is there's so many women who are working and need to continue to work and can't afford to have brain fog.
Well, we met her, well, AI.
Well, yeah, will you just use AI? Okay, I know. Does
Yeah.
help. It does help. So that's interesting that, I
But
wonder if
also
they
it's
didn't provide any kind of format because they don't want the liability, or do you
or
know
they
what I
just
mean?
still don't know yet, or maybe that's what they keep saying, that so much more research is needed and research is needed.
That's a good point.
Is that what the research is for? Like that, I want someone to come out and say, this is the type of research, we're doing. We want to see if,
That's a
I
great
guess that will,
idea.
yeah, I guess that will take time. But even now, like if I sent a consult to one of these menopause specialists,
Yeah.
and the date I got was 18 months. They weren't going to see the patient for 18 months. That's insane.
Yeah.
If you look at in the US, okay, there are so many franchises that's, or not so many, but I think the most, someone told me that the highest selling franchise in the US last year was a testosterone therapy clinic. That they're everywhere in the US, that a man
Hmm.
can go in, get his testosterone tested, and get a prescription for testosterone replacement therapy like that day. It's so easy. There's so much. Whereas for women, 18 months to see
Well,
menopause
I
specialist,
know.
like that's crazy. Like, so I
Well,
feel like, this isn't, I mean, it's, I don't want to say like it's not rocket science to tie it back to them, but
yeah,
it seems like a lot of the time it's a bit of trial and error, and it does come back on the family doctor.
right. But
Yes.
but we know that that's because, in Canada, there's no, well, in most of the provinces, although Alberta just changed this, there's no billing code for doctors to be paid differently and as a specialist, for as a GP, to actually take the time to meet with a woman for longer than 15 minutes at a certain stage in life where you need more than 15 minutes, i.e.
Well, you could, like,
premenopause.
you can bill a
You
counseling code,
as
which
a
is a little bit,
counseling code, but it's
yeah.
not a huge incentive to have a lot of doctors learn about this area. And you apparently, I mean, you were the one that went to medical school, not me, obviously, but they don't focus on it in medical school. I think isn't there 1 or 2 days only of
I mean, I
gynecology?
wouldn't know. I mean, unfortunately, it's been 20 years.
Oh,
I
okay.
think it's changed since I was in
Okay.
medical school. Although someone
Yeah.
told me the other day I looked very young to be a doctor, and that made me feel really good. I think she was just
No,
being nice, but still, I took it.
you take it.
I
You
took
take it.
it. But
But there hasn't been, the
it's
reward
just because
system for it.
everybody's different. But I did say there's some new products that they're selling now that's really interesting. So I guess because I was talking about this, so obviously my phone heard me and started sending me um, products and things that I could buy related to it. So I saw this new testing kit. I think it was called Mira or Mira something,
Hmm.
where you can test your urine, and it will tell you your levels of estrogen, progesterone, and FSH daily. So during perimenopause, you can track
Wow.
if your estrogen's running low or high, because the problem with perimenopause and the reason they call it the zone of chaos is because you have these radical swings where sometimes your estrogen goes too high and then sometimes it's too low. So it's very
Hmm.
hard to know, well, do I give her more estrogen, or does she have too much estrogen at certain points that's causing her symptoms? So that's why it's a bit, it's
Hmm.
different for everybody, so it's hard to know. So maybe with these,
That's so that's so interesting, Melissa. What
yeah,
is the name of that testing kit again?
Mira, Mira. I think that's what the whole name was, but it might be something like Mira Care, Mira something. But that was
Okay.
the name of these urine tests. And I don't
Do you
know, because
think?
I mean, the thing is, the problem with hormone testing is it changes throughout the month. So if you do someone's hormones on one day, it will
Oh.
be radically different 3 days later. So it's very hard to know, one test isn't going to tell us anything. It's more seeing over the course of a month, you
Hmm.
know, what overall your levels are like.
Hmm.
So
You think you can get that in Canada? I mean, I know it was sent to
yeah,
you on your Instagram. Oh, really?
yeah, I was gonna buy it, and then I didn't because then I was like, I don't know. Do I really need? It's not relevant for me really at this time, but
Mm-hmm.
I did think it was, you know, it is something that I would look at potentially buying and testing and seeing where I'm at. And then you can correlate it with your symptoms as well. So you can say, if you had this test at home, and let's say you had a day where you were just feeling crazy sweats and brain fog and having a bad day, you could test your urine and say, aha, my estrogen's super low right now, or my estrogen's way higher than I thought it would be. And it would give you a little bit of help understanding
Mm-hmm.
symptoms.
Hmm. So I just
Look it up.
grokked this. I'm
Okay.
now using, I think grok is a verb. Like I'm
Yeah,
not
good.
Googling,
Well, that should be, yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm grokking. So I just grokked. There's no specific, okay, so Mira,
Just
Mira,
say
there's a Mira fertility and hormone tracking product.
that's it.
Yeah, and the company is powered by Quanovate. So
That's it.
anyway,
Yeah.
interesting. We'll see where that
Yeah. We'll see. Maybe I'll do it over, the
a
course of a month
month.
and just get a sense of it. If you're fully in menopause, so menopause is you've gone a full year without a period, then it's not going to give you much information because we know your estrogen level's low throughout the month. It's more in perimenopause that when you're still getting your periods, they're irregular, that it's like, what is going on? And this is, I think, when most women, a lot of women suffer is this transitional period, just because it's chaos. And then once women are in menopause, some people, once they're in that steady state of low estrogen, they feel fine. And these are the women that I'm confused about because it's like
Right,
they feel fine, but should we still be giving them extra estrogen to protect
right.
them? You
And
know,
yes, that, and also too, sometimes you feel fine, but maybe that's just your view of life. I'm always just fine. So do you know what I mean? Versus people who are
right.
like, I'm not fine,
And
like,
maybe it takes 10 years or 15 years from that low estrogen to actually cause the damage. And then it's too
right.
late. So maybe that's what I'm saying. Maybe it needs to be more of a prophylactic, preventative thing so that
Yeah,
15 years from now, you're not getting a bladder infection every other week. Or
right.
15 years from now, you're not, starting to have memory lapses or,
That's
those kind
right.
this is where I'm sort of, this is
Well,
where I think the research is needed. And
yeah, I
the
think,
only way to know it is to do a trial and but how do you do that? What do? You take women in menopause and say, some of you were going to give hormones and some of you were not, and then we're going to follow you for the next 30 years and see who did better. That's the trial that we're going to need. So we're not going to have the answer for a while.
right. And then if you just want to, try, maybe you just get on it. Just,
Yeah.
think, it's not hard to imagine that if you operate with hormones your whole life and your body is better
Used
with
to. Right.
hormones, one would easily assume, myself, that I'd probably be better to take hormones versus not.
That's the assumption, right? And then that's what science is. It's testing our assumptions.
Right.
So that's what we need. But that's what you would,
Right.
because it used to be that women didn't really outlive their ovaries. People didn't used to live till 80, 90 years old. People died at
Hmm.
50. So they went through menopause and that was when,
Hmm.
that was it.
Sure. So
So,
the takeaway is we need to continue to aid the research, but really try to figure out if there is a renowned menopause specialist, if they would prescribe some type of, you know,
that's what I want to know.
standard.
I want to know if they're taking it themselves. I want to know if the menopause practitioners that are in their 50s, like not someone who's in their 70s and it's already been 20 years since they went through menopause, but someone in their 50s, would they put themselves on hormones? That's what I want to know. And my guess is yes. My guess is
Okay.
that they would. But I mean,
All
I don't
right.
know. And the other question really, and then we'll move on from this topic, is to make sure we're giving adequate doses. Because you don't ever want to do any harm. So we've been taught, give someone the lowest dose needed to control their symptoms. But
Yeah.
it may not be that we're giving them adequate doses to really enough to get
Yeah.
them that baseline of estrogen that would be protective. So I think we need to figure that out as well.
Yeah. So maybe we'll try to answer those questions with
Yeah,
somebody
would be
on
great
this
to
over
get
the
somebody
next couple
to
of
ask those
weeks.
questions. Yeah.
Okay, moving on, but still staying, so stocks, but in the medical industry. You wanted me to look at a company called, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Doximity.
Yep.
The ticker there, for anybody who cares, it's traded in the United States. The ticker is DOCS. Not too hard to imagine.
Docs.
But Melissa, do you know what the company does? You might describe it better than I do because I think do you want to describe it?
I think I don't know anybody that uses this in Canada. I think it's more common in the US, but my
Mm-hmm.
understanding is it's like a LinkedIn for doctors. It's basically a platform for doctors to communicate with each other. So if you're a doctor in the US, you're on this platform, is my understanding.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's an apparently when I looked it up, an online networking service started in 2010. Back in about 2011, so it started in 2010, only 10% of US doctors were members. And apparently in 2018, it's something like 70%, and also includes nurses. So they've had some significant growth in terms of their membership. So it's a place, for doctors, nurses, practitioners to collaborate, to get updates. It's a medical social networking company. The stock, just FYI, when you asked me to look at it last week, we didn't have time. It was trading at 53 bucks. It is today trading at about $56. So it's had a nice little move higher. I've looked at some equity research analysts covering the company. The 12-month price target is $80. So again, it's trading at 56. So they see some nice upside. It's in the area of medical technology, which encompasses a couple of different types of companies. It can encompass like Abbott, Boston Scientific, Intuitive Surgical. So Intuitive Surgical is the
Robotics.
Da Vinci method of doing surgeries using a robot versus the actual doctor. So it falls within the medical technology space, which makes sense. It's doctors and a technology platform. And they've seen some significant growth in terms of the membership. It is expensive. It trades at about 56 times earnings. So, but that's because people expect it to continue to grow significantly. A lot of analysts that are out there saying, that there's record engagement, they've got strong bookings, that AI can help them even further. They've had very strong quarterly numbers when they reported their last quarter, and they have got a very strong competitive position. They do recognize that it's a premium valuation, as I just mentioned. But in general, when I've looked at the analyst commentary, all very positive, all very positive. So I just thought, do you have any comments on that?
No, I just thought it was interesting. I mean, I don't know anybody that uses it. But again, I'd like to talk to somebody who does. I'm curious what the cost is of
Oh, why don't you join it first before you
I'm
buy the
seeing if I
stock?
can. I'm wondering if they sell ads, if a lot of their revenue come from advertisements, and if they start banning pharmaceutical ads on TV and stuff like that, maybe that's a place that pharma will advertise.
Hmm.
I don't know. I'll look at it. I'll see if I could
Yeah,
even join it, or if it would be something that would be open to Canadian. Like, I don't know if it's just
yeah.
US or if it's all over the world. But anyhow, I thought it was interesting. I'm curious. I've been looking at it, so thank you.
Yeah, and the stock has done very well. It's pulled back by about 15% or so over the past month, but in general, it's been a stock that's been on fire to the upside. I
Okay.
just want to mention though, Melissa, because I mentioned it trades at a 56 times PE multiple. PE stands for price over earnings. And so, I want to just talk about, to calculate the price, the PE multiple. That's what's called a PE multiple. You take the price of the stock, so it's $56 is where it's currently trading, divided by the earnings for the year, which is $1. So 56, this just happens to be easy math. So
Yeah.
56 divided by dollar is 56.
Yeah.
So it's trading at 56 times. So what does that really mean? It's showing you how much investors are willing to pay for each dollar of earnings.
Okay.
So it's relative to expectations about future growth. So they are willing to pay 56 times each
Currently.
earnings per share. And why would they do this? They're expecting that, a company that trades at a higher PE multiple. And how do you know it's higher? You have to look at the company relative to other companies within medical technology. So if other medical technology companies trade at 30 times, and this is at 56 times, it's a premium. You also can look at it relative to the market multiple. So the overall broader market might be trading around 21 times. So this is more than double. So it's really trading at a higher multiple.
I think I read a stat one time, and I could be wrong, that like Warren Buffett's mentor at one point told him never buy a stock that has he would never buy something with a PE multiple above 50. But then that means that Buffett would never have bought Apple. And look at how much money he made on Apple.
Well, I'm not sure about that. I don't know what multiple he bought Apple at. I'd have to even look at what it's
And I
trading
might
at
be
right
wrong
now.
saying 50, maybe it was 20, maybe whatever the number
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
But yeah, we could look at that for next time to see what that was. But again, like it seems to me like growth stocks would have high PE ratios because you think they're growing.
That's exactly right. So,
Mhm.
so one of the things with respect to, this 50 times, people are saying, hey, this is going to be, they're going to grow into those earnings and I'm going to get it now. So their earnings, they might be $1 now, but they're going to be $20 in, 5 years or whatever the time frame is. So people who are buying are willing to wait and to
Mhm.
and to wait for that company to be able to grow into their earnings. So they think it's justified because the company will deliver future higher profits, future earnings. They also think,
Does any company have a PE of 1? No. Don't they all have a positive PE?
well, one,
No one ever grows into their earnings. They're always,
um,
maybe I'm wrong. I don't
no,
know.
no, yeah, I know, I hear what you're saying, but there you can certainly see many companies that are trading at a very low multiple relative to the market and relative to where they've been, and that's often because people lose confidence in them, like their earnings have dropped dramatically.
Mhm.
So, or the price of the stock has dropped dramatically.
You would think if their price and earnings were exactly equal, then it would be a very fair, like that was just what it is. It's a stable thing. And they're paying you a dividend. I could
Well,
be
I guess that's what you would think, but don't forget markets are forward looking.
right.
So nothing is ever stable in our lives, is it? It's like we're never right. But
Nope.
but I also just want to mention too, again, like when you have a high PE multiple, people believe that this company has a competitive advantage, has a strong brand, has
Yeah.
innovative technology that ensures some sustained profitability going forward, right? So you can look at like a Tesla. They've got a very strong brand. They've got innovative technology if you believe that they are really an AI company. So, and that they have got a significant market opportunity. Those are some of the reasons why people would buy into a growth company.
Good question. Does Tesla own Grok or is it a separate
That
company,
Twitter, so Grok is part of Twitter, the Twitter app,
which is a private company,
which is X. Yeah,
which is
X.
X? Okay, but so Tesla, so unlike, like Meta owns Facebook and Instagram
Right.
and I think WhatsApp. Can't remember if they own WhatsApp or which one owns WhatsApp. I don't know. But what I'm saying is Tesla just is Tesla, but the grand thing, one day maybe Tesla would own maybe if X and Grok and they could all be
Oh,
acquired.
combine? Maybe.
I don't know.
That's an investment banker question, Melissa.
Okay, well, all right.
Sorry.
I better stick to medicine because I
No,
don't.
no, no, you have good ideas. Throw it out
I
there. You throw it
So I
out
wanted
there.
to talk about one more medical thing because I
Hmm.
didn't get to it last week. And I do want to touch on it because I talk about Ozempic a lot and Mounjaro and GLP-1 agonist drugs. I do a lot of posts on them on my social media. And, oh, to use your lingo, I'm quite bullish on them most of the time when I post. I talk about how they're a game changer in medicine and we're seeing all these positive things associated with them. Yes, the weight loss, obviously, but also reduced cardiovascular disease, now even potentially neurodegenerative diseases, dementia, addictions, all sorts of things. So people say to me, well, what's the downside, right?
Hmm.
So overall, what I see in my practice, most commonly, side effects are mostly gastrointestinal. So constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, nausea, those are the things I see most commonly. But there is something that's getting some attention that's a bit more serious, and it's called NION. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's an acronym that stands for non-arteritic anterior ischemic neuropathy, which is why it's way easier just to use the acronym NAON or NION. Basically, it's when you don't get enough blood flow to the nerves at the back of the brain that connect the eye to the back of the brain, and it can result
Wow.
in sudden and permanent vision loss. So that's something more scary. So that's when you hear, well, I've heard it's associated with blindness. I mean, this would be what this disease is. So initially, they first linked it in 2024 when they looked at people that were going to a neuro-ophthalmologist. And what they found was that the people who were on semaglutide, which is Ozempic, for diabetes, okay, were something like 3.4 times more likely to have this nigh-on condition than the people that weren't on semaglutide. And when they looked at people that were taking semaglutide for weight loss, not diabetes, um, compared to other people, it was 7 times more likely. So there was
Wow.
definitely a link. So then they did a broader study and said, okay, let's just look at everybody that's diabetic who was on semaglutide versus the diabetics who were given another glucose reducing drug. And they found significantly more cases of this nigh-on in the people taking semaglutide. So it's kind of scary. It makes you think, wow, does this cause it? So what we're seeing is, yes, there's definitely an increased risk, but it's still a very, very rare disease. So what the stat I read was that it would lead to something like 1 to 2 in 10,000 cases. So you get 1 to 2 more out of 10,000 cases. But if you envision millions of people using GLP-1 agonists in the future, I mean, it could lead to thousands or hundreds of thousands of cases of this, vision disease.
Wow.
So anyhow, so it's something to be aware of, or at least discuss if you already have impaired vision, or if you're seeing an ophthalmologist, or if it's something that you're concerned about. You just don't want to take this drug willy-nilly. You want to make sure that, you've done the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah.
And I think as time goes on and more people are on the drug, we'll see, and that's like any drug, even Tylenol, any drug. You're going to have some people who get a complication,
Even Tylenol? What could be a
even
complication
Tylenol. You
from
could have
Tylenol?
some people that get, liver injury from Tylenol. It doesn't agree with them. Any drug has side effects and risks. Now,
Yeah.
they're still extremely safe, and that's why the safest drugs are over the counter, right? You don't
Right.
pay for them. But you have to look at, that's why you don't just like take all these prescription drugs without weighing even like antibiotics. Everything has some potential risk associated with it.
Yeah.
So you just have to look at how great is that risk and is it worth it? And is the benefit far greater than what the potential would be?
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, some of that did come out, I
Mhm.
mean, I saw some of that a while ago too, the vision issue, but
Yeah. Like, I mean, if people have been asking me about it, is this something I should be concerned about? And, it's something that we have to think about. But I think given how rare of a disease it is and
mhm,
how uh, small the slight increased risk is, it's not something that I would say, oh, because of that, you shouldn't take it if you had other
mhm.
reasons to take it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Understood.
So,
Okay. It's amazing too when you do travels at the States. And I actually I know I was on TV, still
mhm.
do TV, but you know, I love watching TV.
Yeah.
I actually love it.
What do you
Uh,
watch? What are you watching right now?
I mean, it's because it's on. It's still good, but I mean, I watched Law and Order.
Law and
I watched,
Order.
yeah, I watched The Golden Girls.
Okay.
That's when I'm in Florida because it happens to be here. I don't
Watch.
know.
I started, you know what I'm watching right now? Watch Hacks. It's really funny.
Hacks?
Hmm.
I don't know it.
Yeah, it's funny. You
Is
get it
it
on.
it's a TV show?
Yeah, they've got like 4 seasons. I just started watching the third
Is it
season.
is it funny?
I think it's really funny. Yeah,
Okay, and what do you
Christine
want?
Smart. She's blonde actress. She used to be in this. I don't know. You'll recognize her if you see it, but it's funny.
What
Hmm.
do you watch it on though?
I think on Crave or
Okay.
HBO.
Okay, I'm gonna look at it. I love funny.
It's
Especially right
funny.
now in the world, I need funny. Like I'm looking for
Funny.
funny.
Yeah, the new Kate Hudson one was kind of funny too. It was okay. The what
Okay.
the basket, the turning point or whatever it's called.
Okay. I don't know. But wait, the reason why I bring this up is
Yeah.
because when you do watch TV here in the States, the drug companies, like the commercials, there's so many of them,
Hmm.
so many drug commercials. And when you listen to the side effects, you're like,
I know. I know.
it's not
And then they
possible.
have like they distract you. They have like a nice couple and they're
I know.
gardening and they're doing this. And it's like side effects may include. Da, 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 da. I know.
It scares me silly
I
to the
know.
point
But
where I'm,
like I said, the same thing would hold true if you're going to go pick up a bottle of wine. Side effects may include da, 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 da,
Yeah, we need a running commercial around the
on
bottle.
everything. Doing your gel manicure. Side effects may include, da, 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 like,
Actually, that's so true.
there are side effects with everything, but you have to trust that when it goes to this rigorous FDA approval and Health Canada approval, that they've done these trials. And even though those side effects exist, overall, the safety profile has been good enough to approve them and that it's serving a purpose.
True.
You know,
You know
that's
what? We should actually look though, even though I get my nails done all the time, what healthier versions are.
Dazzle Dry.
Dazzle Dry.
Dazzle Dry. It's becoming more popular. There's no UV light with Dazzle Dry.
Okay, let's bring that next time because I don't know what it is and I need to know.
Okay.
Okay, all right, signing off.